Okay, welcome to the last day of the 2014 candidate interviews conducted by Veterans in Politics International. We'll introduce our candidates in just a moment, but I would like to remind our panelists and our candidates as well what the rules of engagement are going to be. We have so far adhered to our strict schedule and plan to continue doing so. We will include the following points. Each of you candidates will have a 1.5-minute introduction. Questions posed by each of our panelists are limited to 30 seconds in length, and your response is limited to 1 minute. The questioner may opt to ask a question of all candidates. If they do, their question must be, and you must respond, yes or no. If time allows, we will have audience members ask additional questions, or perhaps the panel may ask additional questions. We do not intend this to be a forum to air personal grievances, so don't start. Sometimes questions can be too complex and answers can't fit in a minute. If we deem any of the questions that way, we will disallow them and move on. Finally, this is an interview and not a debate, so there will be no redirect questions from panelists once the answer has been given, and no dialogue between candidates. So with that, let's proceed. We have 5 candidates today for Nevada State Controller. If we could start at the far end of the table from me and have you each give us your 1.5-minute introduction.
My name is Cort Arlint, and I want to start out with saying that I am the most qualified candidate for control. Now, those aren't actually empty words.
You need to get right up on the microphone.
Okay. How's that? Better? Sure. All right, first, let's talk about professional qualifications. I am both a licensed CPA and attorney in Nevada. And I'm the only candidate up here who can say that. Next, let's talk about education. I have a master's in business administration and a Juris Doctorate. Once again, I'm the only candidate up here who could say that. Now let's talk about relevant work experience. I spent 3 years auditing the state of Nevada, coming up with findings, reviewing financials. Once again, I'm the only candidate here who audited the state of Nevada financials. Number 4, knowledge. I'm an accounting professor, and in 2010 I published a book on accounting regulations. Currently, I am the only accounting professor and person to publish a book on accounting regulations. And number 5, ambition. If you haven't noticed, I'm about 20 years younger than everybody else up here. But before I was 30, I started both a law firm and a CPA firm in the biggest recession Nevada has ever had. So when you do your judging, just remember one question. Why am I voting for anybody but the most qualified candidate for Nevada Controller? Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Herr, and as Cort said, we're probably all going to say we're the most qualified, and I'm not going to hold his youth against him or anything like that. He's got at least 30 years on me. So, anyways, my name is Herr. I'm a CPA here in Las Vegas. I am president of the Nevada Society of CPAs, a former adjunct professor at UNLV, currently on the CSN Advisory Board for Accounting. Additionally, I have been in public and private practice. I've been a public CPA, auditing various companies. I've been in private industry, in the oil industry, student loan industry. I was an advisor for New Jersey Transit. Before that, I was in retail management with Kinney Shoe Corporation. I was a store manager by the time I was 20 years old. I was, if you will, the original Al Bundy. I bring to the office that wealth of experience, both inside and outside the accounting practice. I have not only conducted audits of large corporations, and as such, I've also been audited. companies I've worked for have been traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange, on the pink sheets out of New York, and all. Additionally, I've been here in the state of Nevada for 24 years. I've raised my family here, and now my daughter is raising her family here, and my goal is to be able to give back to the state and help them go. Thank you very much, Barry Herr.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tom Jones. I want to thank the Veterans in Politics for inviting me. And in reviewing the endorsements of the Veteran in Politics this year, I really appreciate the fact that you seem to pick the candidate that you think is the best candidate instead of handicapping the one that you think could win. And I really appreciate that, and I think that's what makes this such a great event. In 2010, if you had asked me, what is the job of the state controller, I would have said he's a bookkeeper. However, I have found out that he is responsible for more than just bookkeeping. He is responsible for managing the financial transactions of the state. He's the watchdog of the state's money. He reviews the public records to make sure that there's no waste and to prevent public officials from violating the public trust. The budget for the Controller's Office would allow about $9 million to be spent in the last 2 years, which was an increase of about $500,000 over the previous 2 years, which might be wasted itself, I don't know. But there are 48 employees in the Controller's Office. And I would think that with 48 employees, most of them being accountants, the last thing you need is another accountant to pay $100,000 a year to do more accounting. I believe what you need is a businessman to scrutinize the books and find out where is the waste and what is the wrongdoing. Is my time up? Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Ron Knecht, member of the Board of Regents and one plain-speaking nerd running for controller. Thank you to Veterans in Politics, Karen, Steve, Mr. Beers, for the opportunity to be here this morning. I am the best qualified candidate. I've got over 40 years experience, half in the public sector, half in private entrepreneurial small business, all of it in professional, supervisory, managerial, and policy levels. I've got an undergraduate degree from Illinois, a master's in engineering economic systems from Stanford, and a law degree. I've been on the Board of Regents 7 years, a member of the Audit Committee, and 2 years chairman. I've been 7 years a member of Budget and Finance, 2 years chairman, 1 year vice chairman, and I've been the most active member of the Investment Committee. I've also served in the legislature. I've been a founder, director, or executive of half a dozen private corporations and a comparable number of charitable and public interest groups. I think you need more than an accountant. I think you need someone who will do what I'll do, which is provide the information that will allow voters and the legislature to assure that your tax dollars are spent efficiently and effectively. That's what the statute says. That's what this is about. So, as I said, I'm Ron Knecht, one plain-speaking nerd, and I look forward to serving as your next controller. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having all of us here because this is a very important position, running for state controller, as it handles the state's finances into the billions of dollars. My name is Andrew Martin. I'm going to go over a couple reasons why I think I'm the best qualified candidate, and certainly with respect to my colleagues here. First, it is about qualifications. I am a certified public accountant. I've run my own practice for 20 plus years. I've also served 2 presidents of the United States, certainly President Clinton and President Bush, and received commendations for my service as an independent auditor of the White House Travel Office, among other different audits that we performed. Credentials-wise, beyond being a certified public accountant, I'm also a certified fraud examiner. And during my session in Carson City as a state assemblyman, I was honored to be able to pass a bill, which maybe we'll talk about later, AB 327, which established a fraud hotline, a whistleblowers hotline, which actually will expose fraud in with our public tax dollars. Certainly, going on, I'm a certified financial forensics. I'm a certified internal controls auditor. I'm a chartered global management accountant, which I believe Barry is also. And beyond that, I have a master's degree in accounting. I won the National Accounting Award in Graduate Studies. I hold multiple insurance licenses. They're not active at the moment. I have a mortgage banking license, and I've had a top secret eligible clearance with the White House. Experience.
Time.
Okay. Good enough.
We'll work the rest in on the question. The first one of which will be posed by Tom Blanchard, who is a Navy veteran and president of Veterans Real Estate. Tom?
All right, how you guys doing?
Great.
All right. Great introductions, great introductions. Hey, first question for Ron, and I was trying to pose this question. I've sat on several panels, some with the Board of Regents, and listened to how tuitions have had to go up and up and up and up. Having been on their board, looking at how they spend money, what have they done wrong to cause tuitions to go up that you would make any difference in?
A couple of things, Mr. Blanchard, and first, thank you for your service, and thanks to all the vets for their service. God bless you. On the board, what they've done wrong, especially the last 3 years, is they voted opposite the way I did, which is I voted against the tuition and fee increases. I've led the fight. In fact, I think we're going to win that battle this time at our June 5th and 6th meeting. The second thing, and I've written articles about this in the Chronicle of Higher Ed and the Review Journal and other papers, is we've not focused enough on cost management. And that's my specialty as an economist and financial analyst, and that's what I've done. That's the leadership I've shown, and that's the kind of thing I'll bring to being controlled.
Candidates, be sure that you get close to your microphone because we're set up for background noise to filter it out. So we need you guys close to your microphones. Our next panelist posing a question will be Mike Angel, who's the founder of Nevada Legal Forms and Tax Services.
This question for Cort. What can you do as a controller to help improve the credit rating of the state of Nevada to lower its borrowing costs for future implications?
Say that again?
What can you do as a controller to help improve the state of Nevada credit ratings to improve its borrowing power?
To improve the borrowing power of the state of Nevada.
Right.
Yeah, one of the things that you can do is have more devotion spent to collecting the bad debts of Nevada so that we have more revenues. One of the areas that Kim has really worked on as controller is upping those collections so that we have more revenues. That would raise our credit rating for Nevada and allow for more borrowing. Also, I think that there could be work done, let's say, bringing in technology into our accounting system so that we can have better, more accurate accounting records so that they can be relied upon better. Because the only two issues that you can have with credit is either increasing your revenue, which we can increase with taxes, but I'm against, or having more reliable financials. So either of those two areas would increase the credit risk.
Thank you. Our next question will be posed by Amber Guyman, paralegal, military spouse, and parent.
This message is for Barry. I know that Nevada was losing a lot of money due to unpaid debts. What is the biggest sector that owes the state of Nevada money, and how do you propose to collect those debts?
Is it on now? I don't know the specific area that has the heaviest collection, to be honest. Insofar as minimizing the debts, what we have to do is, and I'll agree with Cort, is increase our reporting capabilities from the from a computerized standpoint. Right now, we're number 46 in transparency. We have one of the weakest accounting systems as far as interfacing with the various departments and all that. by improving that, the controller's office will have better ability to make the collections. The current controller has been doing a, well, I would say a reasonably good job as far as trying to make the collections go forward on the bad debt and all. But one of the things we need to do is make sure that we improve our reporting, specific areas. I will, if you want, I will, and then we'll talk afterwards if you'd like. I will find out a little more about it and get back to you on the specific areas. Thank you.
And our next question, thought I wasn't paying attention, did you?
I knew you were.
Yeah. Is Melissa Broadway. She's a political consultant.
Thank you very much. My question is for Mr. Martin. What is the area of the budget you personally find the most mismanagement or disappropriated funds for our state, and is our state underfunded?
Wow, great question. The Nevada budget probably has the most area of improvement, and especially with the new healthcare exchanges coming online in health and human services. And certainly that's going to be an area where I expect a lot of possible fraud to occur with Medicaid, with the new Medicaid exchanges to go. So my goal is obviously to make sure that all claims are verified and validated before getting paid, and certainly if it's a problem, to work cooperatively with the federal government to make sure that they don't do any clawbacks on our state budget because they're claiming that we're not spending our money appropriately. So I would target health and human services. That seems to be the most open-ended. That would be where I would start.
All right, Jade Giraldi is a Marine vet, and he'll ask our next question.
Yes, this question, I would like to get a 60-second response from each person, if that's okay with the moderator.
I don't know. maybe Karen and Steve will fire me. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I really would like to get a response from all of you on this one. From what I hear, like for example, the school district is top-heavy. Most corporations would last a year with the top-heavy that they have being funded by tax dollars. There's no exposure of accountability as far as where the finances are going, how they're being distributed, as far as I know. If you were elected, would you put in place some kind of public accountability where people could see where the money is being dispersed within the school district, and also to address the accountability, just basic accountability of finances, how it's being dispersed?
Let's start with Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Well, I've had the privilege of serving on the Clark County School District Bond Oversight Committee, so I got a really good insight into how the monies flow around. As for the bureaucracy being top-heavy, that's been a complaint for a long time. And as for the transparency question, I'm actually in consultation with some other states in terms of how to actually publicize what we spend our money on, and making the Office of the State Controller more consumer-friendly. One of the reports that the current controller puts out, which I'd like to expand, would be the Citizen-Centric report, which is an English version of the accounting reports, but would certainly expose any waste, fraud, and abuse. But certainly my experience, having been in the State Assembly and being on the Clark County School District Bond Oversight Committee, has made me attuned to the very concerns which you raised.
Thank you, Mr. Giraldi, and thank you very much for that question, as well as your service, because this goes to the heart of my platform, why I'm running for this. First of all, is the Clark County School District top-heavy? Yes, just like the system of higher education and all of education in our country has become top-heavy over the last 30 years. Secondly, there was a question about the funding. I have a graph on the back of my first flyer here that shows the following. State spending in real per person terms has increased 20% faster than the incomes of Nevada families and businesses in the last decade. And the driver in that has been K-12 education spending and HHS. This is exactly the kind of information that I believe that the public, the voters, the taxpayers, the legislature is entitled to and needs, and it's why I'm running, is to put out exactly the kind of information that you asked about. That's what I will do. What this whole thing's about. Not just education, but pensions and so forth. And I'm out of time at this point, so I'll stop there.
What I would do is, I would make a suggestion to the public that the legislature put some pressure on the school districts by saying that they would not increase the school budgets. They would not authorize the increase in the school budgets unless they cut the administrative costs down to maybe like 40% and put the money where it belongs in the classroom. And then I would get on TV, I would release press releases, I would get on the radio, and I would publicize that, and I would lobby the legislators to follow through on this and put the pressure on the school districts, because the legislators can only set the budget. They cannot tell the school districts where to spend the money. But if they refuse to increase the budget and tell them they have to reduce the administration costs, something might be done. And that would be my solution. Thank you.
Well, first thing I would say about the education aspect of it, make sure we get good people in there in the Board of Education. They're the ones who actually control the budget, not the controller. With that said, the other thing we have to take a look at is where we sit from an educational standpoint nationwide. We want to look at success. If we want to look at success, we need to look at other states. What are they doing? One of the things is they don't have the educational system. We all complain about being from the government, from the federal government. We don't want it from the state. School control should be more localized. The local areas know better than the people up in Carson City, than the people in Washington do. Additionally, as far as top heavy goes, there's a transparent Nevada website. You can see how much people are paid. So as far as that goes, anybody with the state, Clark County school districts or whatever. But I'd also like to increase the transparency of the state so that when the citizen wants to go on site, they can go and see where the money's being spent for various projects and everything like that. I think at that point, you not only have the 48 or 49 people that are in the controller's office overlooking it, but you have the 2-some-odd million people of the state of Nevada overlooking it. Thank you very much.
Once again, this comes down to experience. While I was the state auditor, one of the things we audited was the Washoe County School District. I did for 3 years. And you'd be surprised, it came out pretty clean. We went all the way from making sure teachers were paid the proper amounts to where were school funds going, and it looked good. And so part of the problem is not the funding and not the schools. Part of the problem is that they're spending their resources in order to get the kids to pass tests. And when you look at where we are dead last in the nation, it's dropout rates. It's not grade school. It's getting them from 8th grade to passing their senior year. And that's where the resources should be spent. Instead, we're spending money on these tests every year. We're spending a bunch of time. It needs to be a cultural change to keep kids in school to graduate high school, not necessarily coming down on how the budget is spent in schools.
Thank you, Mr. Giraldi. Our next question will be posed by Rowena Criffeton, who's the founder for the Shine Family Foundation.
Hi. Actually, I have 2 questions, but I can only ask you one. And this question I'm compelled to ask. Why are you elected and not appointed?
Sure.
1 minute.
Okay, I guess I'll start. Well, I mean, first of all, of course, it's the law right now, and there's been a lot of debate whether or not it should be elected or appointed. Certainly, with the appointed position, the advantage would be that depending on who's making the appointment, you would get absolutely the most qualified candidate. With an election process, that's not always guaranteed. We all think we're very qualified, and certainly the voters will decide that, but they're not as knowledgeable, and that is a problem. But certainly right now, if you go back into history, the office of controller was actually one person. I think it was the 20s or 30s, where it split between controller and treasurer. And this has been an ongoing discussion throughout the course of time. Is your question whether I think it should be an elected position or a appointed position? I guess it's an irrelevant answer to the question that it's certainly a partisan election. I don't know. I'm still thinking it through like everybody else. But right now it's an elected position and I'm running.
Thank you for the question, and the controller and the treasurer are established in the Constitution as separate offices, and it would take about 5 years to change that. There have been proposals to change it, to merge them, that sort of thing. In the meantime, somebody's got to do the work, take care of business. It's not clear to me that there would be any great economies, any synergies to be gained. I think there's some accountability, some transparency that might be lost. And that's why I think it should remain elected and probably should remain separate, precisely because if you have someone who's appointed, that person's accountable to the political wheelers and dealers who got him appointed or her appointed, and that person won't be advancing the kinds of proposals that I've advanced here for increasing the accountability to the taxpayers in the legislature by mining those financial reports to get out the key information that you need. So I think election is appropriate because it will develop that kind of transparency and accountability. Thank you.
I am a strong believer in separation of powers, like a constitution was set up, and we should have a separation of powers. And I believe that when we have the treasurer appointing the watchdog of where he's spending the money, we no longer have separation of powers. So I like it the way it is, and that's why I'm running for controller.
Well, Accounting 101 says the controllership and the treasurer functions of the corporation should be separate for segregation of duties. So I agree that I think we'll agree there that they should be pretty much separate. As far as elected goes, it definitely should be an elected office. Clark County Controller currently is an appointed office by the County Commission, and as such, he or she has to report and has to fulfill the whims of whatever is on the Clark County Commission. As State Controller, I will be answering to the people, not to the governors directly, although I will work with the governor, I'll work with each of the constitutional offices and with the legislature. Ultimately, the job I do is going to be rated upon by my constituents, the state of Nevada.
I think it is a difficult question. I get a lot of times when I'm out meeting people, what does the controller do? And I think judges have the same similar problem here in Nevada. They're elected too. When it's really hard to find out what it is exactly they stand for and what's their record. Separation of powers is a very important accounting concept, as reiterated by these two, and it should be kept separate. Whether it's elected or appointed, I believe in the people of Nevada being able to make the best decision for themselves, and so I think it should be an elected position.
Okay, our next questioner will be Dr. Danielle Dupree, who's a holistic doctor.
Yes, how about the very few words answer from all of you? Where do you see yourself doing the most good if you're elected? Where are you going to do the most good for Nevada if you're elected?
Let's start down at the far end.
I think where I'm going to do the most good is the audits. When I was doing auditing for the state of Nevada, our findings would go up to management, and they would never be published out to the public. One of the things I would like to do is make a report that has the findings so that people of Nevada can know what the government is doing wrong. So I think if I was elected, that would be the biggest area that I can make a contribution is disclosure of the audit findings.
I believe the best area that I can do overall is, and was asked one of my colleagues here, is preparation of the various financial reports to be able to, so we can get better rates out on the market for monies that we may need to borrow. I want to improve the financial reporting of the state. I think as a CPA and with my experience, I can have the office running more efficiently, better results, and help improve the transparency of the website.
since I believe that the Controller's Office is a watchdog of the money, of the people's money, and how it's being spent, and what it's being used for, I would use the office as sort of a bully pulpit and go out and tell the people all the areas where I think we could improve the efficiency of the way the money is being spent, how we could eliminate waste, things we could do, and I would use the publicity of TV, radio, anything I could do to get that point across. And as I said, I would even lobby the legislature.
Thank you, Dr. Dupre, and we'll all handle the audit functions. I've done audits. You don't have to be an accountant to do audits. We'll all handle the nuts and bolts well, I'm sure. But I think the important thing is what I've talked about in my campaign, the controller's reports, at least once a month, maybe as often as once a week. I'll be going out to Kiwanis clubs, women's groups, Rotary clubs, etc., around the state continuously to put out the kinds of analyses, to show the results of the investigatory processes and audits and that sort of thing, and educate the voters so that they're sure that the tax dollars are being spent efficiently and effectively.
Well, thank you for the question. Certainly, doing the audits are one aspect of it, producing all the reports from the Controller's Office. But I also spent 10 years as a community college instructor in accounting, and I agree with some of my colleagues here that getting out into the public and actually having listen and learns, instead of meet and greets, I call them listen and learns, finding out what the questions are and being able to answer them and actually explain in common sense terms instead of accountingese, which CPAs and whoever can be guilty of. I think it's very important. Certainly building the website to allow for more transparency and having key statistics on there is very important. I've been, like I said before, in consultation with some other states about how to do that in the most effective manner. But as an assemblyman, I've been out in the community. I'm used to doing that when I was on. Thank you.
Okay, our next question will be posed by Michael Mazur, who's a Nevada attorney.
Thank you. Based on to the candidate's experience in either auditing the state's records, the controller's records, or looking at any of the financial reports that were put out, what changes would you recommend based on what we've seen in the past? And that's specifically related to the controller's office. It's to all candidates. We'll start over on the right side with Cort.
Yeah, I actually don't think there's a whole bunch of changes that need to be made. The financials are pretty clean. What needs to be made, though, is more disclosure of what goes on behind the scenes. So the financials that are produced, they even produce like a simplified version, and you can find that on the controller's website. And they're doing a great job of doing the financials. They're audited, they're clean, they're good. But what's you're not seeing is all the back behind the scenes stuff. What were the audit findings? What did they change? We should know about those things, and those things should be disclosed too. That would be the change that I would see.
One change I would like to see, and it's been mentioned by some of my colleagues, is using the office as a bully pulpit. As Cort said, I want to make sure, I want to get out to the people, let them know what's happening with the finances of the state, going about letting them know where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are. Also want to get out and help people use the office to help improve their own personal finances, because I personally believe that if the citizens are better stewards of their own money, they'll understand the challenges we have in government as well.
The thing that I would do is I would simplify the problem. People can look at the reports all they want, but they don't. They don't look at them, there's a bunch of figures. I would say, here's the problem, like in the school district, we've got spending too much on administration. And then I would get that message out to the people so they didn't have to go to the website, didn't have to look through all these figures. I would get it out so they can understand it, they know the problem, and they will know what our problem is.
Thank you, Mr. Mazur. Three things. First of all, I would focus on the federal single audit. As chairman of the audit committee for the Board of Regents, I had to oversee the cleanup of a problem we had with that That contract has just been let again by the state for the next 4 years, but in preparing to do it 4 years from now, I would focus on making that more intense and compliance better. Second, when it comes to the financial reports, you can look at the financial reports, they're big and gray. I've looked at it and I've pulled out the information and I'll highlight that on the website.
Very good. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. I guess I'll go back to what I've been saying earlier about citizen-centered. Of course, when you put in the citizen in the center and saying, hey, and meeting with people, and I've done this to a great degree throughout the different experiences I've had in Nevada and the relationships that I've had. And certainly, the challenge is breaking down complex accounting and auditing on a statewide level for people who are not used to it and say, hey, does this interest you? I mean, I had the experience when I looked at the Clark County School District audit report, and I was like, my head was spinning. So I feel for people out there who want to know more, and I want to help them do that.
The next question will be posed by Dr. Jasmine Brooks, who is both an attorney and a medical doctor.
This question is for Mr. Martin. You had mentioned, you have stated some concerns regarding fraud in the Medicaid sector, and the Health and Human Services Department was one of the departments that you're going to take a look at. My question is two parts. How do you plan to do that? And the second subpart to it is such a massive sector. How do you plan to do that, and do you plan to grow your department to have oversight?
I'm glad for the simple question. Yeah, well, I mean, part of why I'm running, the background is that I have relationships with various department heads throughout the state of Nevada and certainly the legislature. And I think by making sure that people are watching, mainly me in the case of being controller, that'll become apparent who I should be talking to and who we should be reporting with. I also enjoy a good relationship with the media, and I believe the media has a role in exposing any potential problems in our state because, you know, we have a job to do. The exchanges are here, and we need to make sure that we're in compliance with the law so we don't get penalized at the federal level for the monies that we receive from the state. I think I answered it.
I think it's like 11 seconds to spare. Our next question will be from Brian Bouchant. He's an Army veteran and the president of Fallen Not Forgotten.
How you guys doing? Thank you very much for coming. This is going to be for everybody. Just yes or no, please. And then we're going to start with you, Mr. Martin. Do you think unemployment should last 2 years? Yes or no, please?
No.
No, shorter.
No.
No.
No. Okay, our final question will be posed by, thank you. Will be posed by Metro, when he's not doing this, Officer John Shute Jr.
How you doing? If each of you just a real quick, less than a minute answer. Tell me where you think the most waste is right now in Nevada budget.
Go ahead and start up with the party.
Sure. You know, I don't know how much waste there is in a specific area. It all does get audited, including all the Medicare, Medicaid, school programs, all gets audited. To pinpoint a specific area that could be audited more, I would maybe say the healthcare side could use a little bit more auditing, but it is really already covered by auditors that go into it.
Specific area, I would say, would probably be management. I think as a government, we tend to be top heavy. We are constantly promoting throughout the years for seniority and things like that. I'm not saying that many of the people aren't worth it and don't deserve it, but I think ultimately a lot of times we tend to just people promote them to get promoted too long. So I would say management in general.
I don't know what I could point out where there's waste, but I think one of the biggest problems And I think it is using too much money is on pensions for public employees. I mean, there are employees out there making $600,000 a year that are going to retire on $47,000 a month. I think we should put a cap on that somehow.
Thank you, Officer. I think it's not so much a matter of waste, fraud, and abuse as it is a failure to do good cost management. I wrote an article on this for the Chronicle of Higher Education about the problem in education. And as somebody said, it's focused first on too much administration, not enough worker bees. And so I would look there. But secondly, what you've got to do is structure the incentives to give department heads, to give managers the incentives to adopt new technology, make productivity gains, adopt new business models. That's what the public sector hasn't done like the private sector has.
Well, I mean, I would like to concentrate more on the process than any one specific division, because I think all of them probably can gain efficiencies. Certainly, like, I've gotten reports about NDOT being wasteful, but you know, then we have to talk about, well, how are they budgeted? We don't want a spending free-for-all at the end of the fiscal year to allow people to spend off their budget so that way they get the same money again to do the same process over. We want some good performance metrics and say, well, how do we get them to actually account for the money that they're spending? We have to go more to a system of trust fund accounting in the state versus general fund accounting. And the idea is that we can audit to those funds and measure objectively and see how everyone's doing and then decide what's working and what's not. We don't want to necessarily just randomly give anybody money, and we want to make sure that they're accountable. And I think having more consumer focus, making government work for us, are some of the ideas that I'm going to work on.
Okay, thank you, please, to all 5 of our candidates for controller. Question. Actually, we are out of time. We're going to open the schedule. Sorry about that.